with such enthusiasm today.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
All right.
I give you a hard time whenever I can.
Well, that's partially your job, I guess, and that's part of the job description. What's up, everybody? Corey Singletary here with the Citizens Utility Board with another episode of CUB Tracks, along with
Tom Content, Citizens Utility Board. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone, whether you're listening via your favorite podcatcher app or YouTube, and make certain to like and subscribe and follow along so that you don't miss any future episodes. So when we were sitting around and thinking about what we could talk about this week, the commission kind of took care of that for us. They had some interesting, recently they had an interesting meeting where they took up 2 petitions for declaratory ruling, and we'll get into kind of what that wonky business means. But on June 21st, they took those up and they decided to open up.
July 21st.
July 21st. Sorry, July 21st.
More recent than that.
I'm wishing it was June still. July 21st, during the commission's open meeting, they took up 2 petitions, one by the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, MREA, and another by Vote Solar, asking the commission to make some decisions about how or whether third-party owned solar installations are subject to regulation in the state of Wisconsin.
So can you rent your panels or not?
I mean, that's basically the question, right? So companies like Sunrun, I think Sunrun still does that. Various companies provide alternative financing. I'll say it. Most of the time, what people are familiar with in terms of if you're going to put solar on your roof is you got to, whether it's a $10,000 installation or maybe you're a business and it's more than that, you got to come up with the money, just like putting a new roof on your house or putting in a new furnace. You got to finance that through a loan or cash or whatever the case might be. But there are companies that provide options where you can essentially lease or rent. I think lease would be the more appropriate term. Solar panels on your rooftop, and then you would get the output from it. But I don't know, that arrangement has had a tricky past, hasn't it?
It has. It's gone nowhere fast in Wisconsin for a while. And you've seen in other states like Colorado, New Jersey, more recently Iowa, where it has been allowed. And you've seen solar projects multiply. A lot of activity in those states where you see it. And folks have tried different avenues in Wisconsin, both at the legislature. Legislature declined to move forward on anything. The Eagle Point City of Milwaukee case didn't get anything resolved. So now we have these 2 as a new try to clarify where we stand.
Yeah, and ultimately it comes down to kind of the vagaries of law, right? The definition of a public utility as set forth in WISTAT 196.01 sub 5 defines what a public
everybody
utility.
Get your statute book out now.
Yeah. I'm not going to bother reading it, but ultimately the short version is that the way that definition is worded makes it unclear as to whether or not third-party ownership arrangements would cause that third-party owner to be subject to utility regulation, because some argue that the lessor, is that the right term, is selling electricity to a utility customer, which would trigger would cause them to be defined as a public utility and would potentially trigger franchise problems and things of that nature in terms of overlapping service areas. But really what it comes down to is when the laws were written, they just didn't contemplate this arrangement at all.
Exactly. I mean, it's something that whenever that was first penned, this is too new for that. So here we have Vote Solar and MREA now coming forth with petitions.
Mm-hmm. And so there was actually a bill in the last session of the legislature, wasn't there?
Yes, in the legislative session that I guess technically has ended. For all intents and purposes, there could be a lame duck session after the November election, but all official business has ended in this session, and the solar companies introduced a bill that we supported that would have clarified this and basically enabled the leases to happen.
Yeah, and so
it did not get out of committee, as I recall, and it didn't have a hearing either, similar to the community solar bill. So that was a Senator Cole's bill on the third party and Senator Strobel on community solar.
So that's still a little unfinished business, and I think we've heard from some folks that I think there's interest in taking that back up and seeing if there's a way to move forward on the statute, on the law side of the ledger, as it were. But this has been a challenging one, and the history of this before the commission, before the regulator, is that there have been a number of declaratory rulings requests that have come before the commission. And the commission has been asked a few times to kind of define on a sort of statewide basis what factors, what kind of criteria, what the criteria would need to be to make it so that third-party ownership is okay. Essentially, what boxes do you need to check? And then if you check all these boxes, then you're good.
Then you can move forward.
Then you could move forward without, being concerned that you're going to be in this weird gray area of the law where the utilities are going to say, nope, that's illegal. And then other folks are going to say, no, that's not illegal. And the commission has up to this point basically said, well, we'll take those up one by one. So what that means is if someone wants to put in a project, in addition to developing the project and coming up with that and working with their vendor, with the third-party ownership vendor, the leasing agent or leasing company, they also have to go before the regulator with a big legal filing and requesting a decision from the commission.
It seems like a lot of bureaucracy to put solar panels on my house.
It does. It does seem like a lot of bureaucracy. And so that was one of the issues, certainly, that came up in the commission's discussion, is that they have sort of precedent on how they've handled this up to this point. And both MREA and Vote Solar were asking the commission to basically make more of a statewide ruling to consider what set of facts would constitute a legal third-party ownership arrangement for resources like solar. And there was a little bit of a contentious argument on that one.
Well, there was, and Commissioner Nowak dissented from the majority and basically says, no, this should be in the province. This is in the province of the legislature. It should only be the legislature taking this up, and not the commission at this point.
So ultimately what the commission ended up deciding on a 2-1 vote for both petitions was to essentially open up each docket to take in evidence. The exact process for that and what that looks like is a little bit TBD. But to take in evidence and have that come back to the commission, have a record come back to the commission by December 1st of this year so that the commission can make a decision. And, as you mentioned, we've supported the concept in the past, but I'm kind of curious as to what your take is of this particular iteration of this particular question.
I mean, I think the fundamental thing for me has been, we have this system in place now that is actually not. It's slowing down the ability of folks to actually take advantage of solar, and right now, if you're a We Energies customer, for example, you can rent your panels. But you can only rent their panels from the utility, unless it's one of these case by case things that goes through this laborious process. And so for somebody who can, if you're renting your panels from the utility through their Solar Now program, you're not really getting a clear signal on whether how that price has come up with, and B, it's part of the rate base. In other words, the utility's return is actually built into the cost of that. So from the standpoint of just making sure customers have optionality, I think we've got to take a hard look at seeing if these dockets are a path forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up Solar Now because we've heard from people in the We Energies area that the utilities take a very interesting approach to this. All of them, if they're asked by a developer or a customer, is this sort of third-party ownership, is this leasing arrangement legal? They'll straight up tell them, or they'll represent it as this is illegal, even though it is very clear that the legality question is sort of open, and there's a gray area.
There's a gray area, and it's case by case.
Yeah.
Until we find out otherwise.
Yeah, and so, but the interesting thing about the way that the company handles their that Solar Now program is essentially it's a rooftop leasing program. Like if you're a farmer, you can lease your farm field to host like a solar farm. Right. Solar Now is basically you can lease your rooftop to the utility to host utility solar panels. So you're getting a payment. You're getting a lease payment that is tied to a certain extent to the value of the solar. But that's not offsetting your electricity usage or anything. It's just a lease payment. They're renting property from you. But the utility will represent that as sort of equivalent to a third-party leasing arrangement. But you mentioned optionality, and I think you're right. For us, that's the biggest one. I mean, we're not a solar organization. We're not a renewable organization. But what we are definitely in favor of is making certain that customers have that unnecessary barriers to customers making decisions about how they want to meet their their electricity or utility needs, their energy needs, that those barriers are no more burdensome than absolutely necessary. And the thing that when I look at this, I'm actually glad the commission took it up, because essentially what both petitioners, MREA and Vote Solar, said in their filings before the commission is they're essentially arguing that there is a cross-cutting statewide set of facts that would set forth the rules for how third party could work, right? And it doesn't vary by utility because, let's be real, it doesn't, right? And so these sort of cross-cutting issues, these sort of cross-cutting sets of facts, that the commission should rule on those. And my personal opinion is that, this is exactly what the job of the regulator is supposed to be, whether it's the Public Service Commission or any other regulatory agency, administrative agency, right? It's their job to interpret the law, and it's their job as the subject matter experts, as the technical experts, to allow for evolution in the interpretation of the law as things like technology changes. So to me, the argument that no, the legislature has to affirmatively deal with this one little thing, this little bit of minutia in order to resolve this issue falls a little flat for me, because otherwise what's the role of the regulator?
Right. I mean, we have this regulator that's there with all this expertise about utilities, energy, et cetera. Let's let them do their job.
Yeah, and it certainly doesn't preclude the legislature from weighing in as well. The legislature can still make laws and could take this issue up at any point in time. But this is not a new issue, and the commission has essentially been gently asking the legislature to resolve this ambiguity problem for years, and they've elected not to. And so I think it is not out of bounds for the commission to use its technical expertise, which it points to in a number of venues, that we have this expertise and this knowledge and this very specialized expertise, to clarify the law for people. And I even went and looked up the declaratory ruling statute, and it specifically says that any where is it here? That any agency may, on petition, et cetera, issue a declaratory ruling with respect to applicability to any person, property, or state of facts of any rule or statute enforced by it. And it's that last part, that state of facts. And I'm glad the commission is hopefully going to take this up on kind of a statewide basis, because we're just wrapping up a set of 5 dockets where there was a set of cross-cutting, uniform technical facts that apply to all utilities, or virtually all utilities in Wisconsin. And it would have been much clearer for everyone, the utilities and stakeholders and commission staff and everyone, if we had dealt with those cross-cutting issues first before we went to utility-specific things.
But the commission didn't hesitate to dive into that. They didn't say, "Oh, the legislature has to do." They didn't give the job to the legislature to do 1 or 5 different cases about parallel generation rates. I mean,
No.
this is right in the sweet spot of what the commission does.
Yeah.
For them to dive in on this.
Yeah. So we'll see the we have a clock. This will all be wrapped up at the bow to get back to the commission by December 1st. And we will definitely be monitoring it. I don't know how in depth we will get involved. I mean, like I said, like you've mentioned, we're certainly in favor of more options, not fewer. And it's certainly a little hard to argue that if you had 2 identical solar facilities, like you had two buildings, whether it be a home or a small business, 2 identical buildings with 2 identical solar installations, but one was purchased cash or with a loan, and the other one was leased, that somehow they're different and they should be treated differently. So we'll see how that pans out. And, I think MREA and Vote Solar have laid out some pretty decent arguments in terms of an initial framework. And so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. Well, and obviously the price of solar has come way down, but still, there's still an upfront cost to that. Mm-hmm. And so this is just another tool in the toolbox. Currently, what are one alternative that some folks in Wisconsin are taking advantage of to spread out those costs are green mortgages. We have an example of a small business member of CUB whose house they added solar, storage, energy efficiency, all these upgrades, and they were able to do it all by spreading out the costs through a green mortgage. So that's one alternative that people can think about while this gets clarified, and hopefully finally does get clarified. As Senator Cole said in his comments to the PSC, this issue's been kind of languishing for a decade as it bounces back between the legislature, the courts, the PSC. It'd be great to see this move forward.
So, I mean, you brought up the upfront cost again. I mean, do you think that there's an equity issue tied up in this as well?
Well, right now, who can really it's only a certain segment that can afford the upfront cost, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so I think that's clearly that's why it's another issue that's in CUB's sweet spot is the equity aspect of this, because we want to see more people. We want to see more optionality for all customers, but we want to see more optionality for customers that are struggling.
Yeah, and certainly, if you look around, a lot of the folks who are maybe not as friendly to solar, rooftop solar, customer-owned generation will often cite that, when it comes to utility rates, that it's the have-nots subsidizing the haves. And that's predicated on this whole notion that the only people who have access to rooftop solar, for example, are the rich. But if you can come up with alternative financing arrangements that increases the accessibility, certainly I wouldn't expect the most economically distressed communities having solar pop up like weeds, but certainly it makes it so that the economics are a lot different, and who you're talking about as a rooftop solar host or owner, whether it be businesses or residential customers, I think it really changes that landscape, and it does improve equity. It does improve access to resources that can potentially allow folks to manage their utility costs over the long term.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, I think we want to see this, see how the commission moves forward on this, but it's good to see that it is moving forward.
All right. Well, as of this exact moment when we're recording this, the commission hasn't put out its order yet. I'm actually interested to see how that, what they say in the orders opening these two proceedings. But we'll continue to follow along, and we'll continue to update you all as this thing progresses. And
yeah, another big issue for 2022.
Another big one for.
We had a bunch, and now we have another.
Yeah, as if 2022 was going to be super calm and chill and nothing.
It's not snooze times at the in our space.
Nope. Yeah. All right. So we'll keep an eye on this. But thanks for listening along, everyone. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, see you all in the next one.